Hi, everyone. I'm Fiona. My parents disowned me because of my YouTube channel. They said, "You're no longer our daughter, so you can't live in our house." They basically kind of kicked me out. How did it come to this? What did I do to make them so upset? I'll tell you the whole story. First of all, I have to say that my parents are super weird. I'm not exaggerating. Here are some examples of what they used to do. Our kitchen would close at 8 p.m. Literally closed, as if it were a store. At 8 o'clock, my dad would lock the door and take away the key. My mom would announce, "If anyone needs water, you have 5 minutes to get it," before he'd lock it. That happened every day, so I thought it was normal. One day, I was at a friend's house for a pajama party. Just before we went to bed, my friend said, "My mom left us milk and cookies. Let's go to the kitchen." I was so surprised and I naively asked, "Is your kitchen open so late?" I'm not into video games, so this other rule in our house was mainly for my brother Craig. He wasn't allowed to play Pokemon games. You know why? Both of my parents are very religious. My dad read somewhere that Pokemon can evolve. As a religious man, he didn't believe in evolution. He thought that the evolution of Pokemon supported the theory of evolution, so my brother wasn't allowed to play Pokemon. And because of my mom's beliefs, we weren't allowed to watch Harry Potter films or read its books. Because according to her, the series promoted sorcery. Since sorcery is considered a sin, we had to stay away from Harry Potter films and books. Those are just two of the things we weren't allowed to do. Let me tell you about their ridiculous punishments, which really put their weirdness on display. One time, my brother forgot to flush the toilet after pooping. When my mom saw it, she called him over. "You are going to stand here and look at your poop," she said. She kept coming to check that he was really looking. My brother had to stare at his poop for 40 minutes. Finally, my mom yelled from the kitchen, "Flush it!" And he did. Later that day, poor Craig told me, "No matter where I look, I still see my poop." I laughed at the time, but looking back on it, I think it was pretty sad. Now here's one of my dad's weird punishments. Whenever I got a bad grade at school, he would make me call all our relatives and tell them what I got. He'd stand next to me the whole time. For example, he'd call my grandma and hand me the phone. First, I'd say which class it was and then the grade I got. He'd say, "Apologize to your grandmother for being a disgrace to the family." So I would apologize. This was more upsetting for my grandmother than for me. In addition to the weird ones, he also had some harsh punishments. Normal parents usually tell their kids, "You can't leave your room today." With us, it was, "You can't come down from the apple tree today." You heard it right. We had to climb a tree and stay there for hours as punishment. We had an apple tree in our backyard. That's the one we had to climb. For example, cursing would be punished with the tree. The amount of time we spent in the tree depended on the curse word. You know what the saddest part is? When you grow up in a home like this, you think this is normal. You think this kind of stuff happens in every home. When I was 13 or 14, I started learning more about my friends' families' lives, and I realized that ours was not normal at all. This awareness made things difficult for both me and my parents. I no longer accepted everything they said. So we'd fight all the time. They thought I was just acting out because I was now a teenager, but I kept telling them that they weren't normal, and they needed therapy every chance I got. I felt like a volcano that was ready to erupt. There was no avoiding it. I had to get rid of the lava building up inside me, otherwise it was going to harm me. During that period, I realized that sharing was a sort of therapy for me. I felt better when I talked to my friends, but there were some things I couldn't tell them. I'd gone through such terrible things that I was worried they would judge me, even though none of it was my fault. The solution was right in front of me. I decided to create a YouTube channel. I wasn't going to show my face or tell anyone about it, including my brother. That way, I would be able to share everything anonymously. Where do you think I shot my first video? Sitting in the apple tree. I set up the phone's camera so it would only show the apples. I pressed record and started talking about this apple tree's role in my life. I let it all come out. It's weird, but I didn't cry at all. I just talked. Then I uploaded the 1.5-hour video to my YouTube channel, which I called The Girl in the Tree. That night, I felt completely relaxed and slept like a baby. The volcano inside me now had an outlet. After the first 10 days, the amount of views on my video started to go up. I remember the first comment very clearly. Did you really experience this, or are you just making things up? A few hours later, I got a second comment, which said, please show us your face. I continued uploading 2 videos per week. I got over 1,000 subscribers. The 7 videos I uploaded had a total of 9,000 views. As my emotional scars were being healed, something really unexpected happened. My brother accidentally came across my channel. He texted me right away, but I was on my way to a friend's house to work on a school project. So I didn't see my messages. Craig's dream was to be a YouTuber, and he thought that I made this channel to become one as well. He was so happy when he saw the number of views and subscribers. He was proud of me and immediately went to show our mom. When I came home, my parents were livid. Craig realized what he had done, but it was too late. My mom kept saying, "How dare you talk about our private lives online?" My dad said, "I didn't expect this from you. We've given you everything, and you stab us in the back." But the thing is, I hadn't exposed anyone. I had only told things from my perspective without saying anything bad about my mom or dad. I just described what happened, and since it was my experience, I had the right to talk about it. They sent me to my room. I heard them have a heated discussion, but I didn't want to know what they were saying, so I didn't listen. 3 hours went by. I was getting ready for bed when my mom called me. My dad said, "There is no way we can forgive you. We worked so hard to raise you, and this is what we get in return. No punishment would be enough for what you've done. So your mom and I have made a really tough decision. We are disowning you. We can't possibly call you our daughter after this." Disowning? I was completely shocked. I kept listening, but it was like I was living in a dream. I looked at my mom, who was in tears, looking down. I wanted her to say something, so I said, "Mom?" But she didn't look at me. She just shook her head. I knew how stubborn they are, and that arguing with them would be pointless. I've never seen my dad change his mind about anything. I didn't deserve this, but there was nothing I could do. I wanted to cry, but I stopped myself. I didn't want them to see me as weak. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Since you're disowning me, I guess you don't want me staying in this house anymore." My dad nodded. "We're giving you a week to find yourself a place to stay." I could understand their disappointment, but wasn't this reaction a bit over the top? Disowning and even throwing me out of the house? They had 2 children, but it looks like they were okay with losing one. Why was I surprised anyway? My parents' main issue was their inability to be compassionate towards us. I've already told you how they punished us for small stuff. I guess it was normal for them to overreact like this under the circumstances. Now that I was kicked out of the house, I had to find a place to stay. Being a high school student, I didn't have many options. Of course, I went to my grandmother. My parents probably knew that's what I would end up doing. Even though my dad is my grandmother's favorite son, she criticizes him all the time. When she found out what happened, she called him over. "Fiona is just a kid. How can you throw her out of the house? She will live with me from now on. And I am disowning you too. Throw Craig out as well. I'll take care of both of them." My dad listened without saying anything. Then he just left. I've been living with my grandmother for 5 months now. I wish they had kicked me out earlier because I feel so good here. Craig stays over a lot. He says that my mom cries all the time because she misses me. I'm not unforgiving like her. I'd go see her right away if she called. but I don't think I'll ever live in that house again. I was really sad about having to delete my channel, but then I stopped caring because it had served its purpose. It helped me share all that was building up inside of me, right? Thanks for listening to me. If you like stories based on real events, subscribe to this channel. Bye!
Hi guys, my name is Adam. I'm 14 years old. My parents are doctors. My sister is 3 years older than me. We're a happy family. We have lots of fun together. We always look on the bright side of every situation. Unfortunately, something very upsetting happened recently. It made me realize that you can grow up and mature in a matter of days. My uncle and his family live in another city. They visit us once or twice a year, always bringing us gifts when they come. During their last visit, they brought us a box of chocolates that they had bought in Belgium. We finally understood why Belgian chocolate is so famous. They were all so delicious, so we ate a little too much. My mom had to take the box away from us. If they're that good, don't finish them all in one sitting. You can only have one per day, and I'll give them to you, she said. We weren't happy, but she was the boss, and we knew that she wasn't going to back down. The next day, when my parents were at work, we remembered the chocolates. Not that we ever stopped thinking about them. Where could my mom have hidden them? If we managed to find them, she'd be angry, but we also knew that it wouldn't be long before she forgave us. So we started looking for the chocolates, but we couldn't find the box anywhere. It looked like my mom was really serious about hiding it. We started looking in the least likely spots. When we were searching through my dad's desk, we found a key that looked really old. There was a wooden box in his room. My dad had worked at a hospital in Afghanistan at some point. We knew that my parents were often writing to each other then. All the letters were inside that box. Could my mom have hidden the chocolates there? We opened the box with the key. And bingo! We were so happy and started eating right away. Meanwhile, my sister started jokingly reading a letter that my dad had written. My beloved, the days are short, but the months don't seem to end. I have missed you so much. So I started going through the box to find a letter from my mom to read as a response. I came across a folder. I showed it to my sister and read what it said on it. Child Protection Services, Adoption Department. We looked at each other in confusion. Would we be crossing the line if we opened the folder? But we couldn't stop. My mom came in just as we were about to open the folder. But she didn't say anything. She just gulped. In a very calm voice, "Go to your rooms, both of you," she said. We didn't look inside. I know what we did was wrong, but aren't you going to tell us what's going on? My sister asked. My mom didn't even look and just showed us the door. I said, "Go to your rooms." We left without saying another word. We had kind of figured it out. When I went to my room, I immediately Googled Child Protection Services Adoption Department. Just as I thought, these documents were about adoption. I texted my sister the link. She replied with another link about the same subject. She was also trying to find answers online. My dad came home soon after. We didn't know what was going on, but the house was very tense. We were waiting anxiously in our rooms. I heard my mom call my sister. Then I heard the front door close. Where could they have gone? I was so curious. Just then my dad came in. He said my mom and sister went out for a walk. He was being really quiet, as if he didn't know where to begin. A few times he cleared his throat, but still didn't manage to say anything. Finally, he took a deep breath. "Adam, I want this to stay between us, at least for a while," he said. I was getting more and more nervous. I didn't want to hear the rest. Why couldn't they have told me I was adopted? Didn't they think that it would come out eventually? Tears started falling from my eyes. I wasn't crying. I just couldn't stop the tears from falling. My dad looked at me. "Adam, it's time you learned the truth, but promise me that you won't tell your sister that she is adopted. This is really important. Deal?" he said. Wait a minute. It's my sister who is adopted? I looked at him in shock. I should have been happy because I'd felt so sad when I thought that it was me, but it was my sister who was adopted. That idea was so painful. This meant that my sister wasn't my real sister, right? She would be so sad if she found out that I wasn't her real brother. Of course, I couldn't tell her this. Even if my dad told me to tell her, I would keep this a secret forever. I couldn't bear making her sad. The next few days were very difficult. It was as if my sister and I had made a pact not to mention that day again. But I could see that the love between us was even stronger now. She was coming to my room a lot, making all these weird faces to make me laugh. I knew that whether or not she was my biological sister, she was my real sister. In fact, I started to love her even more after finding out that she was adopted. People naturally love their siblings, but loving someone you're not related to is so much more meaningful. Don't you agree? Pretty soon, we were as happy as we used to be. I had already forgotten about what had happened. In fact, I was planning on saying to my dad, "Let's tell my sister everything. It really doesn't matter that she's adopted. I love her more than a biological sister." Just around that time, my dad came into my room. "We think that your sister should learn the truth. However, we have a favor to ask you. We'll talk to her, but first we wondered if you'd like to write her a letter, telling her how you feel." Normally, this would be something I would refuse, but I was happy to do it. Yet, I realized that writing such a letter was a lot more difficult than I expected. Yes, from my perspective, nothing had changed, but what was my sister going to think when she found out that she was adopted? How could I explain this without hurting her? I thought about it for days. I'd start and erase it over and over. I didn't even have the first sentence. Then I had an idea. If she was adopted, for how long had she been my sister? I mean, was she here when I was born? Or did she come after me? I tried to remember our oldest memory to figure this out. There were so many memories from the time when I was a toddler, but which one was the oldest? I decided that the one that I barely remembered must have been the oldest. In this memory, we're somewhere where there are a lot of kids. We are running towards something. I don't know where this was. Like I said, I barely remember it. I trip on something and fall. Only one of the kids stops. The one who stops is, of course, my sister. She helps me up, checks if my knees are scraped, and then picks me up. Then we start running towards the other kids. I started my letter with this memory. "You've been my sister all this time, and you'll always be my sister," I continued. "Not having the same mother does not weaken our bond, but only makes it stronger." I started crying, telling her how much I loved her, how I'll always love her, and that nothing will change that. Every word I wrote was true. I just wrote whatever I was feeling. Finally, the big day arrived. My dad texted me during the day asking, "Is your letter ready?" When I said that it was, "You can give it to her tonight," he said. It wasn't tense at home anymore. It was like we were all finally relaxed and in a really good mood. When my dad signaled me with his eyes, I knew it was time. "Let's meet in my office," he said. My sister was there when I entered. The wooden box that started it all was on the desk. My parents were smiling. I had put the letter in an envelope. I gave it to my sister. She was shocked. She gave me a piece of paper too. When I opened it, I saw that it was a letter that started with, "My dear Adam." I was so confused. Why did she write me a letter? We went to opposite corners of the room to read. I couldn't believe my eyes. My sister was saying that I was adopted. Just like me, she had written about how much she loved me and that whether or not I was her biological brother made no difference to her. After reading, we first looked at each other and then to our parents. My dad took out the adoption papers from the box and told us to come closer. He showed us the folder. Yes, we were both adopted. It wasn't just my sister. I was adopted too. My sister and I looked at each other. We couldn't help it and started laughing. There was no distinction between us. We were in the same boat. We shared the same fate. We hugged each other. Then my parents joined in. The four of us hugged for a while. Then we went to dinner. My parents apologized for keeping this a secret. They said they were going to tell us when the time was right, but that the chocolates had accelerated the process. When the whole thing began, my mom called a psychiatrist that she works with. She said this wasn't her specialty and asked the child psychologist to help out. That's how this idea of letters came up. My parents thought it was a good plan, so they took action. Well, you know the rest. We learned something else that day too. My parents had intended to only adopt my sister. They didn't know about me. But my sister didn't want to leave me behind. She threw herself on the floor crying, "He is my brother. I won't leave Adam here," she kept saying. Apparently, she named me Adam. We're not sure, but we think that it's a name from her biological family. My parents caved in and decided to adopt us both. As you can see, we were really siblings from the beginning. Thank you for listening to me. If you want to share something that happened to you and that really affected you, send an email to the address in the info section. Bye.